Good morning. Today's scripture reading comes from Mark 14, 32-42. Then they came to a place named Gethsemane, and he told his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took Peter, James, and John with him and began to be deeply distressed and horrified. And then he said to them, "My soul is swallowed up in sorrow to the point of death. Remain here and stay awake." And then he went a little farther, fell to the ground, and began to pray that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, "Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what you will." Then he came and found him sleeping. "Simon, are you sleeping?" he asked Peter. "Couldn't you stay awake 1 hour? Stay awake and pray so that you won't enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Once again he went away and prayed, saying the same thing. And he came again and found them sleeping, because they could not keep their eyes on him. They did not know what to say to him. Then he came a third time and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Enough. The time has come. Look, the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hand of sinners. Get up, let's go. See, my betrayer is near." The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God. Well, it occurred to me in looking at the question this morning that maybe the whole Garden of Gethsemane business happened on the time change. I despise those time changes. Yeah, I know. There are a lot of people who like having all that extra sunshine in the evening. I like getting up with the sun, and there was no sinus this morning when I got up, let me tell you. Having said that, now that we're in it, would somebody please pick a time and let's just stay put? All right? That's nice. My stomach will be off for at least a couple of weeks. It will think it's hungry at the wrong time. I'll want to stay up too late with this particular time change and not want to get up at all in the mornings. I despise the time change. So I have a lot more sympathy for Peter, James, and John this morning. There's poor Peter, James, and John. They've gone, they're the three special ones, guys. The whole 12 had gone with Jesus to the garden. But Jesus had brought just these three. And then Jesus said something to them that, at least in my experience, men don't say to other men very often. "My soul is sorrowful unto death." And nobody in the disciple department thought to say, "Well, gosh, Jesus, tell us more about that. How are you feeling? That sounds awful. We're here for you, man." No, nobody thought to say that. But these are the three that evidently Jesus trusted the most. And so he says to them, "All right, you guys stay here and I'm going to go over here and pray." And because I think it was the time change, they fell asleep. You know, I've got to the point in life I used to laugh at my grandfather, because my grandfather inevitably would fall asleep during the news. Now my husband and I rarely make it through the news without snoozing a little tad in the chair there. Be careful what you laugh at, because you may grow into it. So during this season of preparing for Easter, during this season of Lent, we've been looking at these seemingly innocuous questions that the Gospel of Mark has. And we've looked at these questions and said, do they have a meaning beyond just moving the story along? That's my contention. I think the writer of the Gospel of Mark is one of the great writers of Western civilization. And I don't think anything is in there accidentally. And so all of the questions that are in there, I think, can be lifted to a whole new level. And unfortunately, I think today's question is one of those. Now, on the surface level, are you asleep? Well, yes, Lord, I am asleep. It's the time change. Yes, Lord, I am asleep. It's been a long day and the chair's comfortable. Sorry about that. But the reality is, I think that maybe that question ought to speak to us in a slightly deeper way. Are you asleep? if the statistics are to be believed, then it could very well be alarming how much time the younger generations are spending on their devices, whether they're phones or their iPads or even the computers, if anybody even has a computer left anymore. And some of the rest of us who work with computers are a little alarmed at how much time we're spending on our computers. I'm willing to be alarmed. The same thing happened to my generation. When my generation was coming up, there were statistics that alarmed people because my generation was watching so much television. Same problem. I live close to a movie theater, about 3 blocks from the movie theater. And when I drive home, I can always look and sort of check out how the parking lot's doing. Now, there are times, of course, Friday night, Saturday night, interestingly enough, Sunday afternoon, when the parking lot's full. There are a lot of people at the movies. But I never drive by that theater but what there are at least 2 rows of cars, at minimum. Even on a Tuesday night or some other low time, there are always at least 2 rows of cars, and no, it's not the employees park in the back. And I'm thinking, that's a lot of people who are watching movies in this town. And then we see all these blockbusters, and now the news, of course, runs the blockbusters as if they were a football score. You know, oh, this movie did $2 gazillion worth in its opening weekend. Well, you know, to raise $2 gazillion in a 3-day weekend, that's a lot of people going to the movies. And somewhere in the movie going and in the television watching and in our addiction to our devices is the danger that we've fallen asleep, that we're entertaining ourselves to death, that we've stopped doing our own thinking. Mind you, it's not limited to the electric stuff. I am still a book reader. I like paper. Go figure. I like to read books, but I am well aware of my limitations with a book. When I start a fiction book, I have to have it planned. When I was reading Harry Potter, I would go on the opening day and get the new book, but I would not open it till Sunday afternoon. Because I knew what would happen. When I read a new book, I don't stop. When I read James Michener's Hawaii, my mother was out of town, and my responsibility for that week was to cook. Okay? So I had gotten very adept at reading and doing whatever else I was supposed to be doing. So I did. The first evening, I was reading Michener's Hawaii, and I was cooking spaghetti. And it came time to serve dinner that night, and it turned out that I had cooked the sauce, and I'd forgotten to cook the noodles. And because I was slow in those days, I did the same thing the next night. I cooked the stroganoff while I was reading, and I got the stroganoff all ready, and there was no rice to put it on, which was my family's way of eating. And the danger is, are we entertaining ourselves asleep? Are we entertaining ourselves so much now that we're not seeing what's going on in the rest of the world? Are we entertaining ourselves asleep and not doing our own thinking, our own imagining? Are we entertaining ourselves asleep so that our relationships are beginning to deteriorate? Is our relationship with Jesus going by the wayside? Are you asleep? I don't think Jesus is just asking that question to individuals. I think Jesus is asking us as groups. Are you asleep? Groups go to sleep very easily. As long as it's headline, we're all over it. Once it drops out of the headlines, then we tend to go to sleep about some stuff. And I'm very much afraid that some of us have gone to sleep about Hurricane Harvey victims, because they're still struggling to recover however many months down the road we are now. And I'm very afraid that we've gone to sleep in terms of Hurricane Irma victims in Florida, because they are still struggling to recover. And I'm really afraid that we have fallen asleep in terms of Hurricane Maria victims in Puerto Rico, because they are still struggling to recover. You know, when it was new and fresh and in the headlines, you bet we took an offering to help with all that stuff. But the danger is that we don't keep praying, and we don't keep acting, we don't keep giving, and we go to sleep. Now, for the next 3 weeks, you aren't going to get to go to sleep, because the Easter communion rail offering is going to go to the United Methodist Committee on Relief. And so I'm going to keep reminding you of all these disasters, because some of us may have gone to sleep, but didn't. The United Methodist Committee on Relief is still in all of those places where disasters struck. And we're going to make sure that doesn't ever have to go to sleep. Are you asleep? My real worry, my real fear, is that Jesus is asking the church that question. You remember back in January and February, the extreme cold that we had. We had about 3 of those extreme cold snaps. And there again, when the news covers things like that, they like to keep score of stuff. And so they will announce how many people have died. And when the news was reporting those extreme cold snaps, they were reporting how many people had died from exposure. And sort of in passing, it was really sad, because I think they deliberately lifted it up. And I did not go digging, I just didn't want to know. But in passing, one of the news reports said, this many people died, and one of them was a man who died on the steps of a church. And I didn't go looking. I don't want to know what denomination it was. I really don't want to know if it was the United Methodist Church. I don't even remember what state it was. But that image is stuck in my head and refuses to go away. The head of Lifeline's shelter here in Grand Prairie was with me in between when that second cold snap was on its way. She and I were together, and she was talking about the fact. Now, in case you don't know, Lifeline's shelter is not a shelter. There's nowhere you can go and spend the night and get a meal. Lifeline's shelter is a group who work with families with students in the GPISD who are having housing or home issues and try to find them shelter. But there is no shelter. There's no shelter in Grand Prairie at all. But the head of Lifeline's shelter was talking with me, and she said, Kathryn, there's no way that our Grand Prairie homeless are going to be able to get to Arlington. And I don't know what to do. And I think about that in terms of, was that the voice of Jesus saying, are you asleep? It's an uncomfortable question to contemplate. And I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. If you go to sleep during the sermon, especially on this Sunday, that's totally understandable. But I think it's a question that the gospel writer would have us answer, would have us look in the face of Jesus and answer his question to the disciples, because we are disciples of Jesus. Are you asleep? Could you not stay awake 1 hour? Get up. The time is at hand. In the name of the Father, and